So when it comes to psychiatry, you have to realize that a long time ago, they used to throw people in mental asylums. They really didn't know what to do with them. And there came a point when they said, you know what, we can give them drugs that will eliminate them. The military and so on and so forth will help us come up with these drugs. Pharmaceutical sector will make a lot of money, make it a very profitable industry, will increase our control over society, our expert power. We're the experts on what to do with them. Instead of kind of discarding them and saying, you know what, they all annoy us all. They become a burden when you do it that way. But if you give them pills that will reduce their, lifespan, their average lifespan, and you look at it as kill rates and death rates, we can actually reduce the burden on society. And when you look at the eugenics movement, it goes, at the timeline, right? All the way into the 80s with the last sterilization, with the last eugenic sterilization that is associated with the eugenics movement. Actually, there was ones just last year, 2015. But anyway, you look at the timeline, right? The eugenics movement came up with modern psychiatry. And of course, you have Franz Kallman and hereditary and biological psychiatry and social biology. So their solution, it was kind of like the Nazis' final solution. What do we do with these undesirable Jews? It became, what do we do with these undesirable mentally ill people? And of course, I say that in quote unquote. Now, they don't really care if somebody's actually mentally ill. They're concerned with behaviors, thought patterns, and feelings. Is this person bothering people? Is he a nuisance to society, and is he a nuisance to the people in power, the current regime? So they're like, okay, we're going to put these people in psych wards. We're going to put them on drug regimens. That way, because you've got to realize that the eugenics movement wasn't just about sterilize, kill, kill, kill. There was an aspect of it where they said that this is good social policy. They said that if these people who we sterilize are going along with it and not making a fuss, then we should treat them decently. But if they refuse to be sterilized, we should go out of our way to set up the circumstances to sterilize them and treat them very harshly for their social deviance. That was a key theme in the eugenics movement, and Adam Cohen in his book Imbeciles covers it quite thoroughly and quite effectively. So you got to see that the eugenic policies that created modern psychiatry never went away. We still have these, temporary hospitalizations that turn into outpatient treatment with private practices and sometimes even outpatient programs. And they give them these same pills. Some of these pills have been around since eugenics. They give them these same pills that were developed by eugenicists in many cases, and newer versions of these pills. And so these people are drugged up, they're bothering less people, and they're dying at record rates. I mean, you really have to look at it like that. And then there's another level of this that I don't want to get into, but in this video I've thoroughly covered it, is where the philosophies that allowed for eugenics to spring up. Because you have to follow it back to its source. What is the source? What is the root cause of people thinking it is okay to come together in groups and come up with eugenics and then to apply it to society? So yes, it wasn't just the abortion movement and the sterilization movement and, people getting their tubes tied to this day that has roots in the eugenics movement. It is also the pharmaceutical sector and how it applies to psych meds and the psychiatric sector. And many arguments can be made about other pharmaceuticals other than psych meds. And again, I'm not going to get into that in this video, and I'm also not an expert on that. My focus, the scope of my study when it comes to pharmaceuticals has been psych meds. Not even necessarily the chemical structure or all the different psych meds, but generally what is going on and why. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a pharmacologist. But I am very much concerned with the sociological effect of psychiatry, if that makes sense to you. So in that aspect, I'm definitely an expert. I've studied it for years. I've been a patient in several different institutions. I went to a behavior modification program called Ascent that they shut down. And I was at CEDU school in the mountains by San Bernardino, that campus there. So I understand this very well from different perspectives. I'll probably never go to the psych ward again. So I'm looking at it now from, reflection and retrospection. And as I analyze this, I make sure to have a proper assessment. And yes, this is how it is. So when it comes to what do I recommend for the individual? Well, I recommend they try everything else before they turn to these people. Because yes, you can become a more effective worker, for example, on drugs. We know that methamphetamines, the street version, crystal meth, can make one work more effectively and make the time go by quickly. So an argument can be made that, when people do meth, they're less depressed, they do their job more effectively, the hours go by, and they feel good about themselves. It's fucking up their body, and it's that same idea with these psych meds. In fact, Adderall and some other drugs are pretty much prescription meth. Then you have things that are tranquilizers, pretty much horse tranquilizers, and so on. So it's not just the SSRIs that are harming people, not just the mood stabilizers, not just the antipsychotics. It's all these drugs. They're all bad. And it goes back to what my generation was taught when we were younger, that this is your brain on drugs. Powerful pharmaceuticals aren't any different, And I think those of us who have dealt with the streets and those of us who have done our research, and I've done both, we know this. We know this very, very well. We see it all the time. We see crackheads, their bodies just destroyed. And when you think about, say, a husband whose wife's on psych meds, he might be with her 20, 30 years before he notices the long-term effects. It might only take 10 years, but it's going to take a certain amount of time. And how she is going to rub off on him. So if he comes out very irritated, because it hits home, as they say, and says, you know what, these psych meds are horrible, my wife was on them, and so on and so forth, he's already kind of made it hard for him to believe. His believability has been reduced. Because people are like, well, this guy, he's irritated and he's a crazy older guy, and that's how he comes off, right? So when you look at this thing, these people are studying the sociological effect as well. When you look at psychology, for example, there's the sociological perspective. We got to look really how the perspectives of psychology apply to psychiatry. And a lot of these people, these humanists and these feminists, they want to spearhead the movement against psychiatry, so they've covered all angles. So that feminism and humanism and so on, they have a favorable review by people who are activists and who are suffering and looking for somewhere to turn. It's like this huge dragnet, this big old feminist and humanist dragnet that's been laid out there. So when you go into trouble, you turn to them. It's the old problem solution. It's the same with Buddhism and these yogas. If you go to dating sites these days, you'll see tons and tons of people in their description. They say they do yoga, right? This wasn't that big 15 years ago. It was starting to be. This is something that these people have pushed, and in colleges and mental health have pushed, and martial artists have said, you know what? You want to be a better martial artist? Go do yoga. Your stretches will improve. And in so many ways, they kept pushing these things and pushing these things. They do yoga exercises in psych wards and so on. So, yes, absolutely, you've got to see that. Me personally, if a eugenicist has teamed up with somebody, I am not going to follow that person or that group. I make no exceptions to that. If a feminist or a humanist teams up with a eugenicist, if a controlled Christian movement, if a political movement, as soon as you are in bed with eugenicists, you're basically my enemy. And there's so many reasons why that is. It's against my religion. Even if they never killed anybody, what they are doing and what they intend to do is against my religious and personal beliefs. And then, of course, there's the fact that they've killed millions of people. And even if they didn't kill the people today and all this stuff, just their history in Nazi Germany, eugenicists have a very long and appalling history. As soon as they came on the scene as such, they immediately had an effect on society, because there was college professors and people who had won a lot of awards, like Francis Galton, who came out. And then there was people writing books, and Lothrop Stoddard, and Harry Laughlin, and there was a long list of these people. And there was a whole plethora of philosophies that were eugenic friendly that are being pushed by the eugenicists. So for me, it's like, let's look at this thing rationally, and let's look at this thing like the military would look at it. We say, okay, this is what these people like to do. This is their MO. This is their tactics. Okay, say if you're looking at ISIS, right? These are their tactics. This is what we have to look for, and this is what we have to prepare for. We have to look at the types of places they like to recruit, mosques and whatever, and schools and wherever they recruit, right? Internet sites, and we have to observe them carefully and take notes of what they're doing. And when we see activity that is similar, or is a telltale sign of their presence, that we must note it and we must respond accordingly. We do not see that in society. Show me one government agency that is tasked with investigating eugenics in society, or trying to keep eugenics from spreading. Show me one group that effectively keeps eugenicists in check. It just doesn't exist. There's like websites such as Eugenic Watch or something like that, right? These are small websites that have maybe a few hundred people that frequent them, if that, a year, maybe. It's not exactly an effective group that stops these. And I'm not downing these websites. My point isn't to take away from what they're doing. I respect what they're doing. My point is that we do not have an effective organization or government entity that keeps eugenicists from getting their way with society. And as a result, eugenics is ever present. It is ubiquitous. And the eugenicists have won over every major political movement, from the neocons on the right to the feminists and the gay crowd and the asexual crowd on the left, the atheists and the humanists. It's just eugenics has become an unspoken policy of America. It's not discussed openly. They don't talk about it in debates. It just occurs. Nobody argues the morality of it. It is just done. Nobody says, is this sensible? Is this a logical course of action? They just execute. That's like, well, you know what? There's all these mentally ill people. We're just going to start shooting them. There's no trial. There's no logic behind it. You're not allowed to scrutinize it. We all play stupid about it. That's what America wants from people. Let's all play stupid about it. Let's just execute these people. 500,000 of them in Western countries every year. Let's just execute them. It's not up for debate. We don't talk about it. We don't openly discuss how it should be done and if it should be done. We leave it to the eugenicists in the private sector and to the government to enforce and cover up their mistakes. That is America's policy on eugenics. Covert eugenics programs. And it might sound conspiratorial, but let's face it, that's how it is. To say that sounds conspiratorial is no less, ridiculous than saying that the CIA's covert ops sounds conspiratorial. Yeah, because it's a fucking conspiracy. And it's a well-documented, ongoing conspiracy. The covert operations and black ops of the CIA. It's the same thing with eugenics. It's a well-documented and ongoing event. And when you look at what they intended to do, the institutions that they're using, there isn't any signs that they stopped doing what they were doing. The only signs you have is that they stopped making it state policy on record overtly to sterilize people. Thank you.